Nicole, and I'll be retelling the story from Peru, and it's called The Stolen Smell. One day they lived a baker who was very, very stingy and wouldn't even give a stale crumb to the birds. His neighbor, on the other hand, was a kind man and was very glad to share the little he had. One morning when the baker was making some sweets while his poor neighbor was eating stale bread, and when the smell reached the neighbor's house, the neighbor took a deep breath and sighed with happiness, and the baker realized that his smell from his baked goods makes his neighbor's stale bread taste so delicious. Once the baker got so mad, he finally gave his neighbor a bill. The neighbor said, "I can't buy anything from your store." "That's right," said the baker. "You still steal the smell from my baked goods." The neighbor laughed. "You think I'm going to pay you 5 coins a week for a smelling thief?" said the neighbor. "Yes, and if you don't, I will take you to court." Once word of the baker's demand spread around town, all the townspeople laughed that the idea of a stolen smell is actually a crime. When the children passed the baker on the sidewalk, they would all sniff the air beside him and say, "How much do we owe you, sir?" and run away giggling. Once the baker got so mad, he finally took the case to a respected judge. The judge told him to come back tomorrow, and he sent word to the neighbor to bring 5 gold coins the next day. The next day, all the townspeople were there because they were puzzled of the judge's actions. Once the judge entered the room, everything was silent. The judge first listened to the baker's complaints. Then he turned to the neighbor and said, "Is it true that you've enjoyed this man's smell from his baked goods for many years?" "Yes, Your Honor," said the kind man. The judge thought. Then he declared, "Because stealing is a crime, the neighbor must be punished." People were sure that they would let the kind man go. The kind man protested, "But, Your Honor!" "Order in the court," bellowed the judge. He turned once more to the neighbor and told him to take out 5 gold coins. Then he told him to move it one hand to another. Then the baker was so happy that he was going to get his money from the neighbor. The judge said to the baker, "Did you hear this man's money?" "Yes, Your Honor. I believe the money should be mine." The judge thought once more. Then he declared, "Your neighbor was guilty of stealing the smell from your baked goods, and you were repaid by hearing the sound of his money." Laughter filled the courtroom. Even the baker hung his head low and saw how foolish and greedy he had been. And then on, the judge was known as the wisest in Peru. This case is dismissed.
My name is Karen Lee, and I'm going to be telling you the story of Problems, a folk tale from India. Problems, everyone has them, right? Well, this village had a lot of them. In particular, their problem was mosquitoes. There were so many in the village, they would swarm around people. People were constantly smacking their arms, and they would bite people and pass diseases. It was too much. Someone said, the word got around the village that something had to be done about these mosquitoes. "They keep on biting me," someone said. They've been swarming around the food. The children are getting sick. I have an idea. Let's go to the town leaders. Well, they all went there and they said, this has to be solved. There's just too many mosquitoes. So they all had a meeting. Well, we can all try smacking them one by one. No, that'll take too long, someone said. What if we all try and get something to eat them? That might work, but I don't really know what. They all sat there for a moment and thought, until someone said, what about frogs? Frogs love to eat mosquitoes. Well, they all said, let's go down to the lake and get as many as we can. Then we can go spread them out into the village and they can eat all the mosquitoes. Great idea. So they all went to the lake and they got as many frogs in their bag and threw it over their shoulder and went back to the village and let them all out. Well, first everything was going great. The frogs were happy, the people were happy, the mosquitoes were going away one by one until the frogs ate all the mosquitoes. And there was nothing else for them to do but to hop around and get in people's way. You could hear them at night. It was so loud, ribbit, ribbit, ribbit. And you could see them, people would step on them and squish it, hop out of your cabinets, hop onto the table while you were eating. Something has to be done about this. We can't go outside. They come into your house. It's just too much. So they all went to the village leaders and they said, you need to do something about this. So they all had a meeting once again. Well, maybe we can eat all of them. I've heard people eat frogs. That's too many. Maybe we can all try and gather them one by one and send them back to the lake. Can't do that either. What if we all try and get some type of animal again? Maybe something else eats them. Y'all sat down for a minute. Oh, I know, someone said. What about snakes? Snakes love to eat frogs. Great idea, someone said. Let's all go down to the lake and get as many as we can possibly can. So they all went down to the lake and they reached in and got as many snakes as they could and threw them in their bag and carried over their shoulder. When they got back to the village, they let them all out and they started to slither through the village and eat every single frog. Soon, all the frogs were gone. And for a second, everyone was happy until the snakes started to become a problem. The snakes would slither all around the village. They would end up dropping off your house, slithering in your house, biting people. And because they didn't have any more frogs to eat, they were eating other things. People's dogs and cats are missing, their pets, even some of the children went missing. Well, someone said, something has to be done about this. What if are snakes edible? No, I don't think so. Maybe we can try and take them all back to the lake. There's too many now. What if we all try and fight them off? They're too vicious. They have venom. Well, maybe there's a type of animal we can get. They all said and thought. But this time, nobody in the back said anything. No in the middle, no in the front. They had no ideas on what to do. So they all gave up and they said, well, I guess we'll just have to pack up and leave. So they threw their bags over their shoulders and went to a new village. But what they don't know, snakes slithered into their bag. But they don't know that yet. The end.
Hello, my name is Rebecca Garcia, and today I'll be telling you the story of the hare and the hedgehog. Once upon a time, it was a Sunday morning and all the animals were getting ready for church. As the hedgehog was waiting for his wife to get ready, he decided to go to the turnip garden and check how the plants were doing. When he got to the turnip garden, he met the hare. The hare jokingly teased him and said, "Are you taking a walk with those legs?" This offended the hedgehog, since nature had cursed him with crooked legs. So he told the hare, "I bet if we were in a race, I would beat you." The Hare responded by saying, "What would the wager be, or prize?" "How about a dozen coins and some carrots?" This sounded fair to the hare, and he could already taste those carrots. And he wanted to do the race right there. But the hedgehog said, "Actually, I'm quite hungry. Let's go home and have some breakfast first, and then we can come back here and have a race." So they went their separate ways. When the hedgehog got home, he told his wife, "Come on, get dressed quickly. We have a race to get to." She was appalled by this, since she knew he was really slow. But he explained to her that there would be two furrows. The hare would be in one, and the hedgehog would be in the other. So all the wife had to do was be at the end of the furrow and be there when the hare got to the finish line. They went to the turnip garden, and the race started. Whoosh! The hare took off like a windstorm. But when he finally got there, the hedgehog's wife was already there, saying, "I'm already here." He couldn't tell the difference between the hedgehog's wife and the hare, but he knew something was off, so he demanded a rematch. Again, he took off, but this time when he got there, the hedgehog was already there, saying, "I'm already here." So again, he kept on running and running and running until he finally fainted to the ground. The hedgehog went and got the carrots and the coins. And since then, no hare has agreed to do a race with a hedgehog again.
My name is Jeremiah, and I'm going to be telling the story of encountering Reuben Hornsby. I'm an old cowhand from the Rio Grande. My cheeks ain't tan. Can't rub a cow 'cause I don't know how. Yippee-yi-yo-ki-yay. Howdy, partners. I'm just cleaning my pistols. A feller always needs to be careful around these parts. After all, this is Texas. Actually, this is just a replica of the Colt pistol, the famous 6-shooter that won the West. If I was really afraid of something, I would have brought my shotgun. I like to wear my cowboy duds once in a while, just to remind me of my Texas root. You see, my great. Wait, is that right? Great grandfather and his sons were Texas Rangers. Yep, I'm a 9th generation Texan. My great grandfather was Reuben Hornsby. He was born in Georgia and came by steamboat to Velasco, Texas. But he didn't settle there on the Texas coast. Nope. He signed on as one of Austin's early settlers. His land grant was in a horseshoe bend of the Colorado River east of Austin. It's really interesting. Originally, he was a surveyor. He made maps. He surveyed which is now Austin. You can say he helped Stephen F. Austin found Austin, our capital. And talk about a family man. He married Sarah Morrison and had 10 children. That's a lot of cornbread and beans for a family that large. Reuben Hornsby was a Texas Ranger, and we think he participated in the Plum Creek raid to protect early Texas settlers from the Comanches. Quite a man. J. Frank Dobie wrote about Hornsby in one of his fantastic true stories about Texas. Reuben Hornsby's wife had a terrible dream. She dreamt of Josiah Wilbarger, scalped, wounded, and half dead on that cold, dark night. So she woke up Hornsby, and Hornsby said, "No, that's just a dream. It couldn't be true." So she went back to sleep, and she had it again, and this time she insisted Hornsby to get up. So Hornsby put on his clothes, put the saddle on his horse, called out some, and they rode off to find Wilbarger. They found him scalped, wounded, and half dead. They wrapped him in sheets and brought him home to recover. He lived years afterward, had to wear a hat all the time, no scalp. Amazing story. Well, Reuben Hornsby is buried in the Hornsby Bend Cemetery, and it is marked with a Texas historical marker. And my grandmother is buried there. Also, more Texas Rangers than anywhere except the Texas State Cemetery and the Texas Ranger Cemetery. Well, thanks for letting me tell you my tale. I've got to be nosing off. Bye.
I'm Lily Kelly, and today I'm going to be telling you a revamped version of an old French fairy tale called Toads and Diamonds. Once, long ago, or maybe it was just yesterday, there lived a rather greenish-looking old woman named Arbelfraster E. Clark. She lived with her 2 daughters. The older daughter, Gertrude, with an emphasis on the rude, looked nearly identical to her mother and was extremely cruel. However, the younger daughter, Angelica, with an emphasis on the angel, had the kindest heart and purest soul that humans can have. Arbelfraster favored the older daughter and made Angelica do all the work. One day, while Angelica was collecting water at the well, an old woman stumbled out of the forest. "Oh, my dearie, could your old Aunt Zany just sit a spell and glug down some of that crystal clear water? Why, I haven't had a droplet in it, let's see, 32 hours, 58 minutes, and 2 seconds. But who's counting?" Angelica soon remembered her manners. "Oh, of course thou shalt have a drink, and I will hold thy bucket for thee." After drinking her fill, Zany poofed and transformed into a beautiful fairy. "Ah, did you like my disguise? Was it good? I love turning into an old woman. Handicap parking spaces are the bomb. Anyway, I wanted to see if your manners were a match for your looks, and I'm ecstatic to say that they are. The only thing you need to work on is the Shakespearean talk, but it's whatevs. The point is that I'm going to give you a rare and magical gift. For every word you speak, a luscious rose or precious diamond will fall from your mouth." There was a quick poof, and Zany was gone. Angelica hurried back home to an angry Arbelfraster. "You are now officially 4 minutes late. If you didn't know how to swiffer a floor so well, I'd feed you to the pigs." "My sincerest apologies, Mother, but there was this fairy and—" "Wait, stop, pause. Am I going into cardiac arrest, or are random things that did not before exist falling out of your face?" "You are in a fine condition, Mother. There was a fairy, and she did bless me, for I alloweth her to drinketh my water." "You don't deserve that gift. You're nothing but a maid." "Thee madeth me a maid." "Shut up. Oh, my sunshine, beauty, darling, sweetheart." Gertrude grumped into the room. Arbelfraster excitedly shared the tale. Gertrude grunted. Arbelfraster sighed. "Dear, go to the well and get some new water. Then, when an old lady comes and asks for some, hand it over." Gertrude slowly stood up and walked out the door. I say walked, but she was so glued to Facebook that she bumped into the door frame 4 times. After she finally found the well, she threw the bucket in and sat down. She waited for it to come back up. She waited some more. She waited until she heard a bobbing sound. She looked in the well and her soaking bucket, still empty. Gertrude groaned and grabbed the bucket before scooping a bit of water in with only her disgustingly greenish hands. She placed it on the side of the well and scrolled through more BuzzFeed quizzes before finally hearing crunching leaves, footsteps from the forest. A tuft of perfectly wavy hair to one side, a stylish suit, and a half-grown mustache, Harry Styles himself strolled into the clearing. "Hello, love, can I get some water? Got a concert coming up, can't sing What Makes You Beautiful with this dry throat, so I'm hoping what makes you beautiful is your generosity." Gertrude gasped. The star of her Wattpad fanfiction here and in the flesh. She used what she had learned from WikiHow, how to flirt. She glanced at him and then away. Glanced at him. Not too long, Gertrude, look away. Look up, look down, look up again, but through her eyelashes. Perfect. That looks like disgust on his face, but that's true love. Harry Styles took a step back and cleared his throat. So, about the water? Now Gertrude had a disgusted look on her face. Her flirting was not received well. Could it be that she messed up? No, she flirted perfectly. Furious, she dumped the water all over Styles' head. A poof, step, and hop later, Zany was seeing red. "You witch, you demon! This is a cashmere robe, you know. It's ruined! Unacceptable! Toads and snakes from your mouth, you belligerent swine!" Gertrude, with her anger quenched, did not understand Zany's yelling. Her pea brain had long since given up, and she walked home, somehow remembering the way. Arbelfraster was eager to see her daughter. "Well, Pumpkin, what are you waiting for? Say something." "No," Gertrude said flatly. She then stuck out her tongue. A delirious frog sat there, depressed that it had come into existence in Gertrude's disgusting, slimy mouth. It hopped out, and Arbelfraster screamed. "Ugh! Disgraceful! That was no fairy, darling, that was a witch. Oh, that Angelica probably told that witch to punish you. She must have been jealous of your success. This time I'll really feed her to the pigs." Angelica, sweeping in the corner of the room, had heard enough. "I hast not to take this abuse. I'm a strong, independent woman, and I'm leaving." She hurried out. The forest was much scarier at night than at day, but, as she had said, Angelica was a strong, independent woman. She managed to find her way to a road and stuck out her thumb as a hitchhiker. She stood there and waited some more, and waited. Oh, hold on, someone's finally coming. Is that a Pontiac Aztec? Angelica didn't care. It was better than outside. An odd man slowly rolled down the window. A mountain of red curls on top of freckles and a prominent chin. This man was incredibly average. But he had a Save the Turtles water bottle, so Angelica knew he was all right. He offered to drop her off at the Holiday Inn, provided she told him the story. So she did. Halfway through, the man realized that this was the perfect person to start the jewelry and flower shop of his dreams. And by the time Angelica was finished, she was buried in a huge mountain of roses and diamonds. The Holiday Inn employees worked hard to clean out the monstrous pile. Meanwhile, Angelica and the Save the Turtles man hugged and promised to remain friends. A few weeks later, they became more than friends, and after a year or two, they were more than dating. A wedding was in place. At the wedding, Angelica noticed that two certain people weren't there. After being confronted, the neighbors reported that Arbelfraster and Gertrude's home had become overrun with a fantastical variety of toads and snakes. Arbelfraster and Gertrude were currently hiding in the attic, waiting for all the creatures to leave. And last I checked, they were still waiting.
My name is Sohan Bapta, and I'm going to be telling you a story from Thailand called the Freedom Bird, with a Texas twist. Hook 'em horns. As you may know, right now the University of Texas is playing Oklahoma. And you know in Texas, we all love football. So this weekend, there's only two kinds of people. People who support the Texas Longhorns and people who support the Oklahoma Boomer Sooners. We're such bitter rivals that in Texas, we say y'all instead of you all because you all has the two worst letters of the alphabet in it, O-U. I didn't really have a choice of what kind of person I'm going to be this weekend or any weekend because I've been brainwashed from birth by my parents. They both graduated from the University of Texas and they bleed orange. I have enough Longhorn apparel to be dressed in burnt orange for 6 months. Another person who's been brainwashed from birth is my third cousin, twice removed, Billy Bob Bokta. He supports the Longhorns too, but even that said, he isn't the sharpest tool in the shed. One day, he was out in the woods near the Red River hunting armadillos with a bow and arrow. Like I said, he's not the sharpest tool in the shed. He was hunting deep in the woods, deeper than he had ever gone before. While he was walking deep in the woods, he heard a sound, and it sounded like na 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 na. What's that daggum sound? He said. It reminds me of that Boomer Sooner song. I don't like it. He walked deeper into the woods until he came to a clearing. And in the middle of that clearing, there was a special tree. And at the top of that special tree, there was a beautiful golden mockingbird. It was the most beautiful bird Billy Bob had ever seen. And the bird looked down at him and sang, na 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 na. Billy Bob looked up at the bird and said, "How can such a beautiful bird like you have such an ugly voice?" And the bird looked down at him and sang, "Now, I know I can't hear you, but can you sing along with me? Na, 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 na." All right, that's enough. So he pulled back an arrow and he shot it. And it zoomed at the bird, but the bird saw it coming. So it hopped to the next branch and the arrow flew by. And the bird looked down at him and sang, na, 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 na. How did I miss that? I've been hunting armadillos all day and I haven't missed a single one. I've got the broken arrows to prove it. So he tried again. He pulled back an arrow and he shot it. And it zoomed at the bird, and the bird didn't see it coming. It went straight through the bird's heart. The bird tumbled to the ground. Yes. So he picked up the bird and he put it in his sack. He flung the sack over his shoulder and he started walking home. When he was almost home, he heard a sound coming from inside the sack. It was the bird, and it was singing, na, 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 na. How that dadgum Boomer Sooner bird still alive? So he ran home. He got up the bird and he plucked out every single one of that bird's feathers. I'm making birdie pot pie out of you. But when he went to go get the ingredients for bird pot pie, he heard na 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 na. By now, Billy Bob was a little scared. So he got out his knife and he chopped the bird into 100 pieces. I'm making bird chili out of you. But when he turned away from the 100 pieces of the bird, he heard na 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 na. By now, Billy Bob was really scared. So he got a pot. He filled it with water. He put the 100 pieces of the bird into it, and he set it on the stove to boil. I'm making bird tortilla soup out of you. But when he turned away from the stove, he heard na 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 na. By now, Billy Bob was scared out of his wits, and he didn't even have many of those. So he got the pot and he ran outside. He got a shovel and he dug a hole 6 feet deep. He got the 100 pieces of the bird, dumped them into the hole, and then he buried it. That dadgum Boomer Sooner bird is 6 feet under. He walked towards his front door, And softly from under the ground, he heard shh, na, 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 na. By now, Billy Bob was scared half to death, so he dug up the 100 pieces of the bird. He put them into a wooden box. He tied a rock to that box so it would sink. He went to the Red River and he threw it at Oklahoma. Take that, you dirty Sooners! It splashed into the river and sank. Billy Bob walked to his front door. He opened it, and he heard nothing. It was absolutely silent. Finally, some peace and quiet. He went inside. Now that box sat at the bottom of the Red River for a long time, but eventually the rushing currents wore away at the rope until it snapped. The rock tumbled off the box, and since the box was made of wood, it floated to the top of the river and drifted along for 3 days. On the third day, a girl on the Sooner side of the river saw the box. She wondered what it was, so she picked it up. She opened it, and out flew 100 golden boomer Sooner birds, and they all flew towards Texas singing, na, 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 na. A few years later, Billy Bob was out in the woods hunting armadillos again. He came to that same clearing, looked up into the special tree, and he saw all 100 golden boomer Sooner birds, and they all looked down at him and sang, na, 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 na. Now, I know I can't hear you, but I know whatever you just sang did not sound like 100 birds. So let's try it again. Na, 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 na. Billy Bob looked up at the bird, and he thought, and then he said, why didn't I realize this earlier? I may not be the sharpest tool in the shed, but I think I know who you are. You ain't no dadgum boomer Sooner bird. You're the freedom bird. Freedom can't be shot with an arrow, cut into 100 pieces and made into chili. You can't kill freedom. You just have to let it be. And all 100 golden freedom birds looked down at Billy Bob and sang, na, 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 na. And that's the story of the freedom bird. Hook 'em horns.
Hi, I'm Divya, and I'm going to be telling you the story of Alinda who danced in the sky. This is an Estonian folktale retold by Lynn Maroney. Lynn Maroney is an Oklahoma storyteller who now lives in Illinois. She is a recipient of the John Henry Falk Award. Have you ever heard of the Aurora Borealis, also known as the Northern Lights? You have to go all the way to the Arctic Circle to see them. Picture the prettiest sunset you've ever seen. Now change all of those colors to every color in the rainbow. That is the Aurora Borealis, and this is its story. Blue skies smiling at me, nothing but blue skies do I see. Bluebirds singing a song, nothing but bluebirds from now on. A long time ago, in a land far to the north, Alinda was born from a tiny bird's egg, with hair as dark as a winter night and eyes as bright as a summer day. Alinda's work was to direct the birds along their great sky path when it got cold in the north to warmer places in the south. Alinda cared for the birds as tenderly as a mother, and it was not surprising that when she reached the age to be wed, many suitors came to ask for her hand, but she turned them all away. Then, one night, North Star came to call. He came down from the sky in a crystal sleigh drawn by a single crystal horse. He bowed. Alinda, please marry me. I will be a very dependable husband, and you will always know where to find me in the night sky. Alinda thought about this. I would always know where to find North Star, but he would be distant and unmoving. No, North Star, I cannot marry you. Later, Moon came to call. He glided down from the sky in a silver chariot drawn by 4 silver horses. He bowed. Alinda, Please marry me. You will travel to a new place every night, and I will be a very romantic husband. Olinda thought about this. Moon travels, but he takes the same narrow path every night. No, Moon, I cannot marry you. Still later, Sun came to call. He came down from the sky in a golden chariot drawn by 12 golden horses. He bowed. Olinda, you must marry me. With me you will warm the winds. With me you will cause the seasons to come and go. With me you will light up the day. Olinda thought about this. The sun's light is too harsh, and my own would never be seen. I would always be living in his shadow. No, Sun, I cannot marry you. Then, towards midnight, the whole sky filled with colors. Prince Borealis was coming down from the sky in a black chariot drawn by 100 rainbow-colored horses. He bowed. Olinda, please marry me. My light is not harsh, but gentle and soothing. You will not take the same narrow path every night, but travel across the whole sky, and you can come and go as you please. Prince Borealis, have you been eavesdropping? Oh, and by the way, you're perfect. I will marry you. Then, while the whole world was sleeping, they danced across the night sky. Finally, Prince Borealis said, Soon it will be daylight, and I must return to my own land. Prepare for our wedding, and I shall be back by nightfall. And with those words, he faded into the dawn. Olinda began to weave her wedding veil. With help of the birds, she gathered the sparkle from the dewdrops, and under the watchful eye of the spiders, she spun magic thread. Then, sitting at a golden loom, she began to weave a veil so delicate it could scarcely be seen. As nightfall came, Prince Borealis made preparations to return to his beloved Olinda, but the spirits of his own land refused to let him go. They said he was needed by his people. And when Prince Borealis did not return, Olinda continued to weave her wedding veil. She wove and wove and wove and wove, and when her veil finally reached the end of the earth, she let her hands rest. And then she cried. She cried until her tears filled the rivers and streams of the earth. And when she lifted her head, she realized that the birds had been watching over her in her grief the whole time. At her bidding, they gently carried her higher and higher into the sky. They crowned her with the stars. From time to time, in the deepest of winter, Olinda can be seen dancing with the prince, although they never married. As for her wedding veil, it can be seen on any clear night, drifting from one end of the sky all the way to the other. It's also known as the Milky Way. Olinda once again tends to the birds, and she now reigns as queen of the sky. Bluebirds singing a song, nothing but bluebirds from now on. Blue days, all of them gone, gone, gone. Nothing but blue skies from now on. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Gloria Canapilli, and today I will be telling the story of the fire juggler. This story comes all the way from Germany, where it was written by Simone Schummelfeder. I heard it told at Timpfest by Claire Murphy, and I would love to share it with you all today. Once, a long, 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 long time ago, when the world was young, there was no mist. You know, the mist that swarms through the land, touching all the trees and the bushes. There was none of it, not a single ounce. But there was a man, and this man had a very strange job. He lived on top of a hill in a small house with his wife and 5-year-old son. And every morning the man would wake up, turn to his wife, who was fast asleep, and plant a kiss on her cheek. Then he would tiptoe to his son's room, who was also fast asleep, and embrace him ever so gently so as not to wake him. Then he would gather some sticks, matches, and tinder in a gray cloth, wrap it all up, slung it over his shoulder, walk out the door, up the hill, past the great oak tree, and into the world. Some days he would walk a mile, other days 2 miles, sometimes even up to 10 miles before he found the marketplace. But once he did, it was filled with people and stalls and singing and talking, and so he looked for his spot. Once he found his spot, he rolled out the gray cloth and looked for his first audience member. He always looked for a child under the age of 6. Once he made eye contact, he caught his sticks on fire and began to juggle. He juggled side to side and forwards and backwards, and the child would go, "Mommy, mommy, mommy, come look." And the mother would call the husband, and the husband would call the sister, and the sister would call the friend. And before he knew it, there was a whole crowd gathered around him. And he would keep on juggling, and there would be an arc of smoke above his head, and the crowd would roar with applause. And then he would hold out his hat, and people would begin to toss in coins. And with that, he would walk all the way home, covered in soot and smoke. But he was walking towards his favorite moment of the day, when he saw the great oak tree. Well, it wasn't that moment. It was the moment right after that, because underneath the oak tree was his 5-year-old son, eagerly waiting for his father to return home. Now, he didn't want to run to his dad like a baby, so he stood there, but his heart was just bursting with love. He could barely contain his excitement. And the father would see this. So he began to slow down. And now the 5-year-old just couldn't take it anymore, and he began running towards his dad. And the fire juggler picked him up, spun him around, and they walked all the way home. Once they got there, the fire juggler and his wife would share stories with their son, and they would eat supper at their dining table. It was a simple life, but the fire juggler would not have had it any other way. Then one morning he woke up before the sun had even begun its ascent into the sky. He turned to his wife, who was fast asleep, and planted a kiss on her cheek. And then he tiptoed to his son's room, who was also fast asleep, and embraced him ever so gently so as not to wake him. He gathered all his supplies, wrapped them up in a gray cloth, slugged it over his shoulder, walked out the door, up the hill, past the great oak tree, and into the world. That day, he walked 20 miles before he found the marketplace. But once he got there, it was filled to the brim with people and all their different voices and singing and shouting. And so he looked for his spot. Once he got to his spot, he rolled out the gray cloth and found his first audience member. Once he made eye contact, he caught his sticks on fire and began to juggle. And then the child said, "Mommy, mommy, mommy, come look." And the mother called the husband, and the husband called the sister, and the sister called a friend. Before he knew it, the whole marketplace was surrounding him. And he knew for a crowd of this size, he had to pull out all the stops. So he grabbed 3 machetes and began juggling with the machetes and the fire, and the crowd began to clap. But he wasn't done yet. For his final act, he grabbed a live chicken, bok, 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 and he juggled the chicken and the machetes and the fire and the flame, and there was an arc of smoke above his head, and the crowd roared with applause. And so he held out his hat, and people tossed in gold coins and silver coins and copper coins. His hat was almost bursting at the seams. So he began to walk home, covered in soot and smoke. But his heart was content, because he knew his family would be able to live off this for a long, long time. But he noticed something was different, because this time when he approached the great oak tree, his son was no longer standing there. His heart dropped to his stomach, and he began to run into his house, and the first thing he saw when he went inside was his wife, tears streaming down her face. and the second thing he saw was his son lying down on the table, eyes clammed shut, sweat dripping down, and a snake bite on his arm. The wife turned to her husband and said, "I don't know what to do. It just happened so fast and the doctor lives too far away. There's nothing that can be done now." And the fire juggler knew she was right. He heard a noise, and as he looked out the window, he saw that the ground had began to open up. And from the underworld, there was a flight of steps. Climbing up those stairs were the three sisters of death. He watched as they crossed the threshold. He watched as they walked past the hearth. He watched as they reached their long, bony fingers towards his son. And he knew something must be done. So he grabbed his sticks, shoved them into the hearth, and he began to juggle. And now the three sisters of death, well, they were mesmerized, because in the underworld it is cold and dark, and they had never seen such light and heat before. And now there was smoke just filling their small house, and each time the fire juggler threw a stick into the air, pain chewed up his arm. But he knew he had to keep stalling, because for every moment he continued to juggle was another moment his son would remain alive. So he turned to the sister in the middle and said, "I could do this forever. Take me instead of him." So the three sisters looked toward the 5-year-old, and they looked towards the fire juggler. They nodded in agreement and began to walk out the door. Just as the fire juggler was about to cross the threshold, his wife screamed, "No!" And he turned with a sad smile and said, "Yes, remember me to our son." And just as they walked down to the underworld, the ground began to close up. And then the 5-year-old began to cough. His eyes opened wide and his cheeks flushed a rosy hue. He was alive and he was well. Now, the next day, when the mother and son woke up, they noticed that there was a mist covering all the trees and the bushes and swarming through the land. And the mother knew what that mist was. It was the smoke coming from the end of the fire juggler sticks through the underworld, through all the layers of the earth, up the hill, past the great oak tree, and into the world. So now you know that whenever you see mist, it is just a sign of a father's love for his son. Thank you.
Such a fantastic telling, but such a fantastic afternoon of stories from all of our children who are part of our organization, the Tejas Storytellers. Our youth program is just getting started, building up, and I really, really hope that you all will stay tuned, because right after this, Vivian Rutherford will be telling a workshop for young people, young tellers. Even if you're an adult and you're new at telling, please tune in and listen to the work from Vivian Rutherford. Also on tomorrow, right at 1:00 p.m., we will start again with the youth tellers. I'm really very happy that all of you have tuned in. Young people, please turn your cameras on. And those of you who are out there listening, feel free to unmute yourself, send us some texts, some chats, and let the young people know that you really enjoyed what they did today. I just absolutely, everyone, please, and Tony too, you guys give yourselves a bow. Thank you so very much. Such good work. Absolutely wonderful. Thank you all. Thank you all very, very, very much.